Hello, I'm Debbie Bell-Hosking for FinextraTV, bringing you part of our Sibos 2024 series, and I'm joined by Ainsley Ward of CGI. And we're going to ask whether instant mandates, verification of payee, are they just building blocks towards the next big thing in payments? Ainsley, welcome.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
I almost jumped straight into the question there because I want to know the answer. So naturally, the first thing I need to ask you is, what is the next big thing in payments?
Well, this is quite a fun thing because I get to share a little bit of a secret with you. And what we're seeing the next big thing in payments to be is cross-border real-time payments. So a move away from where we are on international transactions today into a new world. This is coming about now, and the reason I believe it's the next big thing is because we're actually at a point where infrastructure is capable of supporting that on a mass basis. So we're reaching the end of the global ISO rollout, hopefully by November 2025, so it's not too far away. We're seeing a lot of mandates in different countries, including in the SEPA zone, for the inclusion of instant payments in all banks to be connected. And we're seeing schemes such as Europe's Verification of Payee starting to appear. Of course, we've had confirmation of payee here in the UK. We've seen New Zealand's announcement that they're actually taking on board the UK confirmation of payee. So the environment really is changing. We're also starting to see some changes to some of those traditional networks. So for example, SWIFT have been working on changes to build out their network to be in preparation for this. We've seen Visa and Mastercard making acquisitions. We've also seen some new initiatives coming into the market. So there's a coalition of central banks who have formed the immediate cross-border initiative, which is IXB. I can never remember how that one goes. So IXB is a sort of a coalition which enables payments to move in real time between those different jurisdictions. One that I had the privilege of working on was Nexus, which is being championed by the Bank of International Settlements, where they're looking to connect together domestic real-time systems to enable real-time payments to move from domestic into international systems. So again, we're really starting to see a transformation in this market and a blossoming of the amount of schemes that are available.
So cross-border real-time payments, apart from what I suppose is obvious, the money moving faster, what are the benefits of cross-border real-time payments?
Well, this is where things start to get really, really interesting. There's some really great use cases already starting to emerge. Singapore, for example, where they've had real-time payments for a while, have joined some bilateral agreements with a number of local countries, and we're starting to see definitely a move of international remittances, so the P2P money moving into that space, so it's becoming more account-based and moving in absolute real time within channels that can be regulated. We're also starting to see initiatives such as EPI in Europe, which of course is the movement of the traditional card-based payments into the real-time payments network, which gets really interesting because we start to do a few things around POS, especially cross-border POS, which again is a place where there's been a lot of cost involved for the consumer previously. But we're also starting to see the introduction of things like the Wero wallet, which the EPI have just introduced, which again could be a real interesting game changer in this if we start to see different types of payments floating across the networks. That's more on the retail side, but where it gets really, really interesting is as we move into B2B channels. So starting to look at the way that real time is being used domestically. So here in the UK, of course, we've got a £1 million limit on B2B transactions for real-time payments. Naturally, that won't happen in cross-border from day one, but we'll start to see sort of a migration of the different types of payments into this real-time, perhaps away from the more traditional methods of sending money internationally, such as SWIFT.
Right, so you've mentioned SWIFT there. From what you're saying, is this to replace the SWIFT network? No,
definitely not. I think there's definitely going to always be a necessity for a backbone infrastructure that helps banks to move money internationally and create settlement around the world. What this starts to do is to move those front-end transactions. There's been a realization at SWIFT for a number of years that this was coming, and you can see in the way that they've been building their network over the past few years some of the announcements they'll be making at Sibos this year. So the introduction of API-based connectivity into the SWIFT network, the introduction of the GPI initiative so we get more transparency in payments, and the move towards Swift Go, which is of course the Swift entry in this space. We really see that there is other players in this space as well. I mean, Visa and Mastercard recognised that this was something that was coming, and you can see that through some of the purchases they've made in this space.
And from what you're describing, what do people need to do to enable moving forward in the way that you're telling us now?
So I think there's kind of 5 things banks need to have done in order to capitalise on this opportunity, and it is an opportunity and also a threat to them. They certainly need to be able to have ISO native infrastructure for their payment systems. And they could take something like CGI All Payments, which is an ISO native payments platform, to perform their real-time transactions, and there are others in market capable of doing that, but it really needs to be ISO native to avoid issues with latency in the transactions that are needed for real time. Because money is moving in real time, obviously fraud moves in real time. So they need to start to look at how do they manage fraud in a real time infrastructure. So making sure they have pieces of technology that can monitor fraud and react to fraud in real time. There's going to be a number of different schemes in this space, which really are going to sort of broaden the places where a bank needs to manage its liquidity. So they have to do management of liquidity in a number of different places. Of course, they're going to have to do things such as verification of payee, connecting out to FX providers, so therefore they need to be able to connect into real-time external APIs, which again is a challenge for a number of banks. And of course they have to do all of that 24/7, because as we move into a real-time world, they've got to have 24/7 availability for their platforms, 24/7 availability for their customers, and the ability to actually run their operations in real time across that time schedule. We recently held a poll during a Finextra webinar where we kind of did a straw poll of who is actually ready for this. And of the banks that responded to that, over 50% of them said that they're a long way from having those 5 things checked off on their list. So we know that there's still a lot to do. But why it's incredibly important is because these cross-border real-time payments, they tend to leverage a lot of the domestic infrastructure, and therefore the cost is much lower than with the traditional cross-border payments. And therefore we're going to see a sort of a cannibalization of the traditional revenues they're used to getting in that space, whether that's traditional SWIFT transaction fees that banks are used to enjoying, whether that's international card FX that they're used to enjoying. So therefore there are things that are going to go away as this new opportunity arises. And banks need to be in a position to protect those revenues, or at least capitalise on the opportunity so they can build new businesses, whether that's in the payment space or whether that's looking at things from an FX perspective.
Ainsley, I'm smiling because I'm thanking you for just fleshing out and answering that question, which is what's the next big thing in payments? And for you, it's cross-border real-time payments, and also the enablers that need to be done by banks. So thank you so much, Ainsley. Good conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.